everyone. Welcome to my first layout for Cut to You in the new year and for January. I'm using this hibiscus cut file. I've cut it out 4 times and you're going to see what I'm going to do with it in a little bit. This is going to be a multi-photo layout. I have 4 pictures. They are 3x4 and we're going to do a zoo layout today. I also have these fun little tropical epoxy flares from Scrap and Happy Studio. I have a piece of white cardstock. We're going to do a little bit of painting with some shimmers colors. And then for pattern papers, I have these pattern papers from Close to My Heart. So this is from the brushed collection, which is probably not available anymore. I tend to buy Close to My Heart collections and then kind of forget about them. So one of the things I want to do is use some of those up. So I'm going to start with my Shimmer's paints. Some of my Shimmer's paints were dried up. No big deal. If your Shimmer's paints dry up, just hit them with some water. Let them kind of soak in for a little bit and they will be just fine, I promise. So I'm just giving this Shimmer's paints that I've added water to a stir, and then it's going to work out really well. I've also spritzed some water on my glass mat. And then I'm basically going to just take this open bottle of paint and dump a bit on my glass mat. So that is going to be plenty right there to do what I want to do. I'm just going to take this nice wide brush and I'm going to soak up some of that paint and I'm going to give a swath of color. So this is going to be a really kind of simple mixed media technique. This isn't hard at all. You just need a nice wide brush. And I know that sometimes that can be a little hard to find. These are from Brutus Monroe. They're not available anymore. They're my favorite wide brushes. But if I can find any on a cherry on top, I'll try to link those down below. But whenever you see release, whenever you see a company release wide brushes, definitely, absolutely, 100% grab yourself a wide brush. It is a crafter's best friend if you want to do some nice mixed media. So I just wiped all of that beautiful sparkliness right down the middle of my page. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this one. So I think this color is Pico de Mayo. And it's just slightly, I know it looks really orangey here. It is not really orangey. It's just a bit of a darker pink than the pink that I already have on the page. So it's really not like it looks so pink there or like so dark, but it's not that pink. I know that light pink is pink caviar, but I'm not 100% sure which color this one is. And I'm doing my voiceover in a quiet part of my house, which quite unfortunately is not my scrapbook room. So I took a brush that was just slightly, well, it's not slightly, but it is not as wide as the first one I used. And I'm just using it to add a bit of depth and color to this. I am always a huge fan of mixed media layouts where colors are layered on top of each other. And I also love brush strokes. So those are the kinds of things you will generally see from my mixed media layouts. If you're interested in more like in-depth mixed media, you can always join my membership, which is just if you go to the channel page, you can just hit join and it'll give you all the different levels and such. And you have access to a ton of mixed media layouts and all kinds of stuff with those memberships. So next up, I have some Pip Pip Cheerio, which is just this really deep, dark, gorgeous, like fuchsia pink color. I'm going to water this down quite a bit, and then I'm going to use it, and I'm going to liberally splatter all over the place. You only need a little. This is really dark and really vibrant. So next up, I'm going to set this aside to dry. You can see how pretty it is. I'm going to let it dry fully. Now, I have all this paint, right? We need to not waste the paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this scrap piece of paper from my scrap. I have a little scrap bin next to me. I'm going to take one of these paintbrushes. I'm going to cover this whole sheet of paper with this beautiful paint, and then I can cut this down for photo mats. I can cut it down for photo mats. I can cut it down for die cuts. I can do anything with it. It basically is going to become really pretty shimmery pink paper that I can use on another layout. So while my background dries and does its thing, let's work with these cut files. So I have two. These are all cut with some cardstock warehouse cardstock. And what I'm doing is I'm going to take the pink flowers and I'm going to trim all of the leaves off of the pink flowers. And then I'm going to go ahead and back the pink flowers with some of this beautiful bokeh paper that was in this collection. So I turn my cut file upside down. I turn my paper upside down. I trace my flower just like this. And then I'm going to fussy cut the flower out, staying inside my trace lines. That'll make sure that I'll get a nice backing on my cut file. Once I have that all cut, I'm going to go ahead and kind of figure out where it goes with regard to my cut file. I'm going to grab some Nuvo Deluxe adhesive. I'm going to put a really nice coat of adhesive, a thin line over the entire flower. Sometimes I'll just dot it around, but this particular cut file, because I cut it at a smaller size, it's kind of delicate and fiddly, and I don't want pieces kind of popping up. I want it to fit securely around and onto my backing. Now, some of the areas on this, even tracing it, it's going to slide a little bit. Cutting it, I'm probably going to miss a spot. So after I'm all done with this, I'm just going to take my scissors and do a little bit of trim if there's areas where the pattern paper kind of pops out around the flower. Next up, I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of my flower. So if you haven't figured out what I'm going to do yet, when I adhere these to the layout, that's when I'm going to pull the backing tape off of the flower. And then I'm going to place the pink flower on top of the green flower, which will give us, the flower will have a nice pop and dimension. And then the green leaves will be around the flower, just like that. It is a super fun way to get a little more pop out of your die cut or out of your cut files. And you can create some really fun and interesting embellishments. Now I'm going to go ahead and create 2 of these. So I did the second one off camera, and now my background is dry. So I decided that I wanted a smidge of color behind my mixed media background, but I also want to add another piece of paper behind it because there is some warping going on, and I didn't want to put it under a book overnight. I really just wanted to get some color around the edge and then use that second sheet of pattern paper to also pull some of the warping out of the mixed media, which it did fabulously. I'm going to go with this super colorful pattern, mostly because I figured I probably would not use it as a full background, and I have 2 sheets of each pattern, so this totally worked for me. But you could do something else if you like to. Or you could gut your pattern paper. That would work as well. I'm going to use some tearaway tape from Spiegelman Scraps. It is super sticky, but it's also a little bit forgiving, which is what I want when I place a background. I don't want it to stick immediately to anything and everything it touches, because then I will inevitably end up not being able to move it around, and I'll put my background paper on crooked. Trust me, I've done it 100 times. But this new tape from Spiegelman Scraps, it is like once you put it on, you can kind of shift it ever so slightly a little bit before it's stuck. And it's not really stuck till you like stick it down. Love that. I like adhesives that stick, but I don't want them to be so sticky that they can't be moved a little bit. You can see that I'm using a ton of tearaway tape. The reason is because, again, I do have warping here. I don't want to leave my background on a book overnight. I just want to keep creating once it's dry. And so I am using this tape and that back paper to really give it some stability. Also, this isn't any kind of special sort of paper. It's really just Basil coconut swirl cardstock, which is fine when you're using acrylic paints like I did, but at the same time, there's warping. So I pulled one strip of tape off the back, stuck it down on one end of that pattern paper, and then I took the next strip, pulled the backing off, and then kind of pulled and really got all the bubbles out so the paper was completely adhered to the pattern paper before I took the next one off, and onward until we have the mixed media paper stuck really well to that back sheet of pattern paper. And that fixed just about all of my warping issues. And now I can just build my layout. So I'm going to start with my photos. I have 4 photos and I decide I need to crop some of them down. So what I'm going to do is that 2 of these more close-up photos of the tropical flowers I'm going to cut into squares, and then I have my 2 rectangles. And that's going to leave me some space to add my title and all of those things. I do want to add some color behind the photos, but after going back and forth, I decided that I'm going to go with yellow, I think. I was thinking green, but one of those tropical flowers, the leaves aren't a green. They're like almost like an aqua green color. And when I put the green behind them, it looked just terrible. So it clashed badly. Like it just didn't go. It wasn't going to work. So I'm going to use yellow for the background of 2 of those photos. So while I go ahead and get these photos mounted on the backgrounds and put into place, let's talk about these photos and this layout. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a layout that I did where I talked about our zoo trip from 2018. We just spent a day at the zoo. It was in December. It was right after my grandmother died. It was kind of like just our family day out to decompress a little bit after her illness and just everything that goes along with something like that happening. So what we did was we went to the zoo in Pittsburgh and we went for the penguins. They were doing this special thing where they let the penguins out. Well, I came home with tons of pictures and I just decided I'd put them into my 8.5 by 11 album and for that year because I scrapbooked 8.5 by 11 for all of 2018 and that would be great. Well, it's not working and I decided that with all the photos that I have, we need our own album for that trip. And I know it's just a 1-day trip, but it was possibly the only thing we did that year. Like that was a trip or like a day out of any kind. So I decided it was totally cool. And if Schmel can have a whole album about an Alice in Wonderland party, I can have a whole album about a day at a zoo. So this is one of the pages for that zoo trip. So these are flowers that were in the aquarium. They had these beautiful tropical kind of hothouse flowers in part of the aquarium, and it was winter outside and gray and cold. So when we went down and walked through those flowers, we usually go in the summer, and I usually would have just kind of ignored them. But because it was gray and gloomy outside, this time, for whatever reason, these flowers caught my eye. They were so pretty. I took oodles of pictures of the flowers and I picked my 4 kind of favorite ones to print, and those are the ones that are right here that we're going to do. So I have my pictures attached to where I want them, and now I'm deciding where I want my hibiscus flowers. What I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of place them in 2 spots. So one of them is going to go right there, and then one of them is going to go kind of off diagonally. And I'm going to allow the leaves to kind of overlap onto the photos. At first I thought I was going to pop them kind of like under, but I thought it was too gappy. Like I wanted them more like closer into the pictures. You'll notice I'm using Nuvo Deluxe adhesive to glue everything on this layout except for my epoxy flare. And the reason I'm doing that is because I find that when you add paint or mixed media to a background, nothing wants to stick to it. In the way of traditional adhesives. So tape runners don't want to stick to it, things like that. So I use my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive and then everything sticks where it is supposed to stick. And now I am pulling all of the backing paper off of my foam adhesive. You can see I put a lot on there. I wanted to make sure that the adhesive was going to stick really good to the cardstock cut file because I wasn't 100% sure that it was going to stick to the mixed media area. And so I added a bit heavy. I was a bit heavy-handed with the foam tape. But you can see there, now we have these beautiful popped up kind of larger embellishments, and I'm going to add some things around them to even out those clusters. But I love how the hibiscus flowers turned out. They turned out really, really pretty. And they were a really fun kind of embellishment to add to these pictures. So next up, I am going to go ahead and do my journaling. I'm going to do the journaling right on this round sticker that's part of the sticker sheet. Now, fair warning, close to my heart stickers are ridiculous sticky. I mean, absurdly sticky. Like if they just even brush a sheet of paper, they're stuck to it. So I highly recommend using a powder tool to unstick the stickers. If you have close to my heart stickers, unstick them before you try to like move them around the page. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do all my journaling on this circle, and then I'm going to use my EK Success powder tool to unstick all of the stickers that I think I might want to use on this layout. I grabbed some melon ball sequins from Spiegel Mom Scraps and these fun little thickers. They're like a rose gold color, and all of my stickers have been unstuck. So I can move them around or make them so that they are exactly where I want them to be on the layout. And then I just restuck them down, which I am totally cool with. I know I want to use at least 3 of these little flares, 1 in each of my embellishment clusters. I just really like the addition of flares and sequins. So they pretty much make it onto every layout that I make. If not both, at least one of them. I really am, they're kind of like my perfect last minute touches for me. So I really like the way that this looks. I love those pops of yellow I was able to pull in from the sticker sheet and the flares. My journaling is all done. So I'm going to go ahead and put it down, and then I'm going to add my title. First, I'm going to put down this flower and this leaf and then build my title over top of those elements. So I called this layout HotHouse Flowers, which I know is kind of like an really old term for the tropical flowers in like the greenhouse area. But that was what was sticking in my head, and I just decided that it was okay. I like the term HotHouse Flowers. I think it sounds kind of cool. And so that was what I went with. Please don't leave me comments and tell me they're called something else now. I know that they're not called that currently. I know they're like tropical flowers or, whatever, but I just decided that was my title. I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle sequins everywhere, just little clusters of them to just add little pops of color and some flow and movement. And so I'm just going to add little dots of Nuvo Deluxe adhesive all the places I want to add the sequins. I'm going to take my crystal katana and I'm going to add them to the little clusters on top of the Nuvo adhesive. And that's going to really help me to know exactly where I'm placing them, place them down correctly. So if you are someone who goes scrappy shopping a lot, then you might have noticed Nuvo Tonic came out with a little tool to do this that's a little bit less expensive than a crystal katana and possibly easier to find. I'm not sure how they work or anything, but I just thought I'd throw it out there. I know Simon Says Stamp sells crystal katanas. I know Amazon does, but as they are not a scrapbooking tool, sometimes they can be a little hard to find, and people always ask me about it. So I do not recommend the jewelry picker from Marvy. It gets gummed up too quickly. I love my crystal katana. They're fabulous. And I'm not sure about this new Nuvo one, but it looks interesting. Okay, that's going to finish this layout off for the day. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and be sure to take a peek at the cut files you have. Do you have some in your stash that would work for this type of technique? Because it's really, really, really fun. And if not, there's loads of cut files over at Cut to You. Bye.